It's time to be woke. Take off your shades, it helps see through the smoke. Cause the wicked hide behind the cloak. And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog. What's real, what ain't? Is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the fact.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hair of the Dog. I'm Andy Kennedy. It is a cool and rainy Monday morning here in central Ontario, in the bowels of Canada, where we're anticipating winter weather. Well, actually, we're not. I found that as I get older, I'm tolerating the cold less and less. And that's, I don't know if that's that I don't like the cold. It's not, I don't like the cold that much, but I mean, I certainly don't have a problem going outside when it's very cold, but it's just, I think it's just, I've done my time in cold Canada, and I would say that that's probably why, there's so many Canadians that go down to Arizona or Florida every winter, because they're just done with it, right? They're just, I had my fun. I bought a snowmobile at some point. I, had cross-country skis or snowshoes. That was a lot of fun, made a snowman, whatever. It just gets old. As you get old, it gets old. So, but regardless of that, welcome to the show. Broadcasting on Fred Hampton leftist channels and the House of Public Discourse, our syndicated show. Some really interesting stuff that's about to come up with that, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and the chat is already starting up again. Hello, Holly and Dingo and the Pale Horse. What's going on? Glad you could join us this morning. We're going to do a little bit of a biopsy on the recent American jobs numbers that have come out and why the uniqueness of them matters and what that means to people, and how we can tie that all together with the heterodox economic outlook that we have. And that begins, of course, with the introduction of my lovely and talented co-host, Miss Carrie Barber. Good morning, Carrie.
Hey, Andy. Good morning. I'm feeling you on that cold weather thing because, here in New Mexico, in the high desert, we have lovely midday temperatures of about 70, 75. It's lovely. In the morning, it's like 40 something. So we get it all throughout a 24-hour period. And of course, we're getting rain today too. Worst desert ever. So,
worst. Yeah. The worst.
Worst. Yeah. So, hey, this came up overnight, and this is my Upfirst story. I did not delve too much into it, but it made me laugh this morning. So I hope everybody in the chat appreciates this one as well. So do you remember the Kraken? The Kraken, that badass attorney, Sidney Powell from the Trump administration, who was going to right the wrong and overturn the election. And yeah, no, none of that happened. And she has now lost her law license, if I remember correctly. So she did an interview. And forgive me, I just saw it briefly. She did an interview, and I don't remember who the outlet was, and probably wouldn't want to name them anyway. But she has implicated a number of people, a member of Congress, and a Supreme Court justice, Alito. She said that the whole insurrection effort from January 6th was meant to stall things so that Justice Alito himself could overturn the election. And here's why I thought it was hilarious. Number one is, Sydney, they've already made you the scapegoat. You have paid a career price for all of this, and they're still investigating whether you can be brought up on any type of criminal charges. And here you go, putting them out there. And maybe she is a whistleblower, right? We believe all women. Maybe she is. I don't know. But now you brought in a Supreme Court justice, and as an attorney, I would think that you would know that it takes more than one. So you would have to implicate not just Alito, but a number of other justices in this particular scheme to overturn the election. So just layer upon layer of oh my God, Trump bullshit this morning. And so I put the link in that if you want to go and watch her interview. I'm like, her attorney. I'm sure she's got an attorney somewhere. Her attorney's going, oh my God, shut up. Shut up.
Yes. So if you thought that you made some bad career choices, you can always feel better by reading about this story.
Yeah. If you remember when it used to be hitting reply all on a corporate email, that was considered a career limiting move. Sydney has pole vaulted right over that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Setting the bar, right? For oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah. Congratulations, Sydney. This is the new manual for what not to do when you're a lawyer.
What? Anybody. And so as we get into our discussion this morning, Andy, here's where I age myself a little bit, and I know you'll come along with me on this one, but when we're talking about jobs and things, we were discussing this over the weekend. And do you remember, so the job market as it is today is horrific, and we were talking a little bit about what these crazy kids are doing to quit their jobs today, and some of the hilarious stories. But in my career, very long career, starting in the early 90s-ish. The only way, if you were working at a big corporation, and my career is filled with big corporate employers, the only way to really get a raise then was to leave the company, go somewhere else for a year or two, and then come back. And that's how you got the salary that was commensurate with your job. Right. So if you stayed at a job, there was no golden watch at retirement anymore. This was during the time where we were losing pensions, and they were telling us how great a 401k was, and we know the bullshit behind that.
Yep.
But the only way to get a raise was to leave the company and come back. And I had numbers of colleagues who did that. They would leave, and everybody go, oh, we lost a great employee. That sucks. Oh, wait, they've come back. And we would just kind of change between different companies in the same city. So yeah, that's back in my day, that's how you got a raise. And so that should have been the first clue to all of us that something was seriously wrong, right? And this was in the 90s, early 90s. So here we are, fast forward, post-pandemic, right? The pandemic's over. Isn't it over, Andy? We're done.
Don't go there, Carrie.
Well, I have to, and let me tell you why. Because when I was reading all the information about the jobs report, none of the analysts mention it. None of them really. Maybe in a little offhand, post-pandemic, and then when they do their year-over-year comparison, they would say post-pandemic and pre-pandemic numbers. But that's it. Like it's totally over. It's not a thing. And we just all need to get back into that job market. What's wrong with you millennials and your avocado toast? Why aren't you get back to work, right? Lazy SOBs is basically what it read with this job report. So as I'm reading this, and I want to go through some of the details of this job report with you. I posted the link. I hope you take a moment to read it. Because there's a whole lot in here that was glossed over. And the analysts and the powers that be, and let's be honest, our betters said that the pandemic's over and it's all our fault that the economy is not where it should be. So I want to have that discussion this morning. about what we are failing to do to make the analysts in DC and in New York and in all of these high profile locations feel a little bit better about job numbers. So yeah, that's our discussion this morning. And I cannot wait to see what everybody in the chat pops off with. So all right, Andy, you ready?
Yes, I am.
Narissa, avocado toast. Yeah.
Yes.
So Eric Gray, Holly, where the pale horse, Narissa, my absolute favorite. I'm gonna mispronounce this, but I like it. Zonidu or Zonidu. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I'm old and still blind, so take that out
You're
phonetically.
good. I think you're fine. You're good.
Okay. Okay. All right. Good. And a dingo ate me, baby. Hi, fam. Love it. Okay. So let's get into, first I want to start with the report. And then I want to give you some examples of the way that I took this report so that you can kind of see where my head is at and then tell me where I'm wrong. Okay. All right. So in that jobs report, this is the one for August. So this is the link that I posted again, and some of the highlights or lowlights that are pulled out in this give you the context. So they said wages across all non-farm workers. They always separate farm workers from non-farm workers. Do you know why? There's the economist answer and then the real answer. The real answer is U.S. economy relies on immigrant and illegal workers. The workers themselves are not illegal, but they don't have paperwork. Our economy relies on undocumented workers for our farms. Okay, because everybody got it, right? So this is why we pull out non-farm workers and farm workers. So the wage report tends to focus on non-farm workers. So it says non-farm workers rose by an average of just 17 cents. First, I hate the average. Average is a terrible metric. It should be median. Median is a little more genuine on what actually happened. So it says the average for non-farm workers was 17 cents. Good on you. You got a 17-cent raise. Oh, but wait, the average, yeah, but that doesn't include private sector production and non-supervisory employees. They got a raise of just 14 cents. 14 cents. Good job. Yeah. So when you're seeing all that rhetoric about people quitting and employers raising their rates and all of that sort of thing, here's what it shakes out to be. 17 cents for just about everybody in the private sector, some of them supervisory roles, and then the non-supervisory got 14 cents. So good job. And I don't mean that to disparage workers. I mean to say that all that bullshit that they say in your face is not true. It's absolutely not true. Here's their own report to show it. So jobs rose, the employment rose by 235,000. That sounds great. Yay, 235,000 new jobs. Well, it underperformed what they estimated of 700,000 jobs for August alone. Didn't happen. And this is why everybody on Wall Street went, well, because they're like, wait, the economy's booming. The pandemic's over. Everybody's getting back to work. Jumpstart the economy. What happened to the jobs? So let's dig a little bit deeper into this. And this is pretty much where the analysis stops on all of the mainstream media, because they don't think that you want to hear the data. And let's be honest, they don't really want to talk about this data either. So when we're going through these numbers, I want you to remember these are real people. These are your neighbors. It's maybe you, part of your family members. It's your local community, okay? So the unemployment rate declined to 5.2%, or 8.4 million. 8.4 million people are unemployed right now. Right now. That number is a little misleading, and we'll go through why that 8.4 is misleading. It's actually very low compared to all the data that goes with it. So Andy, 5.2% unemployment rate. That sounds good, right? That's right where we want to be. We have to have a certain number of people unemployed for a healthy economy, don't we, Andy? Come on. Come
Oh, of course we
on. I
don't. Of
tossed
course
that
we
up for you.
don't. No, of course we don't. That's a neoliberal wet dream, right? That back a number of decades ago, the powers that be decided that they were going to invent a number, and that number is called NIRU. And NIRU stands for the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment, which basically means that if the number of unemployed drops below this number, that the earth will explode in a fiery ball and we will all die. And it's just a number they pulled out of their ass. It really means nothing. The reason why this occurred is because if there is a group of people that are involuntarily unemployed in society, it gives corporations and businesses the leg up on contract negotiations in order to stagnate wages and vilify unions, right? If I know as an employee that if I make waves, my employer can fire me and hire someone else, then I am going to be more apt to behave myself and accept the crumbs that they are offering. And that's basically why we landed where we are, right? A healthy economy actually approaches almost complete employment. And the fact that the neoclassical economic system and the governments of the day has told us that that's inflationary. Okay, sure, it could be a little bit inflationary. Inflation is the amount prices of goods and services rise with respect to time, right? So the cost of things that was even 2, 3, 4, 100 years ago, the costs are now higher. That's normal, right? So it's okay to have inflation. If you have a more just society that is paying people a living wage and has, eliminated for the most part involuntary unemployment, it's okay for prices to go up because people have the ability to pay a little bit more because they're making better money and they're not losing their homes and they're not going into medical debt, and society is better. Back to you, Carrie.
Wow, Andy, that's amazing. And I just want to do a real quick flashback. Do you remember when AOC was first elected, her first term in office, and she had this wonderfully elegant pushback on the Phillips curve? So everybody, get out your little smartphones, look up the Phillips curve. And she had this particular argument with a member of the Fed, and I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but she got that dude to admit the Phillips curve was bullshit, and that's an economic theory that they were teaching in MBA schools that, nobody really talks about it anymore. And it is the preemptive theory into what Andy's talking about, that you do not have to have. The 3%, 3.5% unemployment is not required for a healthy economy. And as I said, getting closer to that zero mark is actually where you want to be. So this 5.2% that we have is absolute bullshit. So, okay, Robin says, good morning. Holly says, we need a UBI and not Yang's version. Holly, do you mean like, I don't know, a subsidy to help us through this pandemic? That's UBI, and we need that monthly, right? So
well,
let's agree with you on that.
let's qualify that, right?
Okay.
If you're talking about an emergency payment for people during the pandemic in order to keep them safe, absolutely, that should have been a monthly thing since the beginning of the pandemic, right? But of course, we live in a capitalist society where you're supposed to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, right? But if you're talking about a universal basic income for everybody in your society for the rest of time, then that is a hyperinflationary event because it goes to everybody, including people that don't need it, right? So it puts a whole bunch of new money out in the economy without boosting the goods and services that would be needed to absorb that extra spending, right? So we talk about UBI. It's actually it's actually a problem on a number of fronts, right? And like, I mean, in the MMT community, we've always pushed for a federal job guarantee instead, right? Because that solves a number of our problems. And like a layer cake, if you add other progressive policies like Medicare for All and a Green New Deal and a number of these other policies, then you're making a more just economy. But you still have the ability to create the goods and services that the extra money people would have, to go in there, get there, because too much money chasing too few goods and services is the definition of hyperinflation, right? Just wanted to add that.
And we need to do kind of a primer on what a UBI is and the pros and cons of it, because it's always out there, thanks to Yang.
Right. And when if you want to UB something, you should think in terms of the UBS, right? Universal Basic Services, right?
Okay.
So we're talking about more socialist oriented services that's run by your government, right? Like utilities,
like police, and
internet,
fire, and library, internet.
Yeah, but
oh my God.
but above that, right? Like more like the socialist programs in Europe and to some extent in Canada, right? And that includes Medicare for All. But somebody goes out in your community and plows the roads every winter if you're in an area that has snow. Well, who was that? Well, those people work for the state or the government, right? Those are universal basic services for everyone. And then people can save some of their money instead of being broke and losing their homes and going hungry and, the like and like. So.
Okay, I want to get to some of these comments because Narissa, we hit home with Narissa. She is one of those people that I think she just realized that she is no longer counted in this job market. And so Nitu, yes, you're absolutely right. The unemployment number is fake because they pulled out people like Narissa. She no longer gets counted in this unemployment number, but it's still there. And I want to get to some of those numbers. This is why, when we started this, I said it's not quite an accurate number of 8 million. Because yes, that is how it works. And then there was you need a federal jobs guarantee. Thank you, Henry. And there were a number of other people who you guys are making some phenomenal points in the chat, and I can't get to all of them. But wow, I'm always impressed with you guys, especially on a Monday morning. Holy, you guys are just off and running.
You're supposed to be still have to sleep, right? Like
not these folks. I love it.
So like Carrie and I.
Oh, come on now. Human love. Fred Hampton needs to update the string can microphone. Okay, come on. Human love solidarity. You've been watching long enough to know what the situation is. And when we talk about true broadband and internet, what is actually going on. So come on. Just we're getting there. So just turn up your figures a little bit. And then Whipple Dingle Weedle Puffin, good morning, says employees should work as long or as little as needed to get the job done and not be slaves to a time clock. The expectations of the boss are just that. Well, okay. So according to this jobs report, Whipple Dingle, you are the problem. That thinking is the problem. How dare you want to be more than a cog in a wheel? So let's continue on with some of these numbers, and I want to get to those hidden workers like Narissa that are still in the jobs report, but nobody on mainstream media really covers this, and the analysts really don't like to talk about it, but it's got to be in the jobs report. So they pulled it out of the unemployment numbers, but they're still there. So we talked about the unemployment rate at 5.2% or 8.4 million. And then they have this really horrible category. They call them the permanent job losers. What? Permanent job losers, like it was your total fault and you're just a complete and utter loser. 443,000 people. But that's not all. That's not all. It continues on. So that's 2.5%. Add that back in to the 8.4 million. Somebody keep it running total for me. And then temporary layoffs that are not part of the unemployment number necessarily is another 1.3 million. That was in August, just in August. 1.3 million people temporarily laid off, right? So what's supposed to happen in a temporary layoff is when that business can bring people back, they're supposed to call the people that they laid off. We know that doesn't happen. And Arissa talked about it. She said she lost her job and was replaced by somebody who was being paid $3 less an hour. And Narissa became a liability because she knew too much. Wait, she knew how to do her job and she had intrinsic knowledge of the business and the process and everything else that made her a liability? What? Okay. But that was totally Narissa's fault for being a good employee. So your temporary layoffs are 1.3 million. Persons employed part-time. Now I love this. This is how they word this. You are employed part-time for economic reasons. They don't specify whether it's your economic reasons or the economy's economic reasons, as in economic reasons. But those of you who are employed part-time for economic reasons is now at 4.5 million. So add that back in, right? Because if you are underemployed, I personally, and I know a lot of you personally know somebody who I know, a chemical engineer with 12 years of experience, highly accredited, works at a grocery store now. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And that person couldn't get hired because you know why? He was 56 years old. So now he works in a deli at a grocery store, and that's exactly where we want that intellectual capital, right? It's totally his fault,
of course,
right?
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
So,
by the way, Narissa,
yeah.
you're not a loser. You're
No,
not a
she's
loser,
not.
Narissa. You're good enough. You're smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like you.
I like it. Absolutely. This is one of my favorites. So, okay, among those not in the labor force, okay, once again, we're picking on Narissa. That's Narissa. Those not in the labor force, but they don't say why. It's not that Narissa's not trying. It's not that she's not a good, credible person. It's not that she doesn't have a skill set. It's just when you, and most of us have been there, when you are grinding your wheels for so long, more than I think it's 27 weeks. 27 weeks trying to get something more than a part-time job, it's demoralizing, right? It's demoralizing. Either you're going to take this crappy wage with this crappy job, or you're going to hold on. Well, those are the people who are no longer looking for a job, not attached to the labor force. So that number is 1.6 million. And that's 1.5 million of that number. Most of them said they were prevented from looking for work due to the pandemic. So do you remember when we had that number of, I didn't look it up this morning, but it's well over 600,000 people, 600,000 people who have died. And then you have their family members who are impacted by this. So if it's a spouse or a parent or something like this that affects you, you may not be able to get to work or do the things that you need to find a job. And oh, by the way, there are another 32 million people who recovered from COVID. Recovered does not necessarily mean you're perfectly well. We still have the long haulers where it takes 6 months or more to recover fully. And sometimes you have sick leave and other things like that. Oh, wait, most of you don't get paid for time off, for sick time, personal time off, all of those.
That's a very good point, Gary. The jobs that we're talking about here really don't have that many benefits at all, do they? Like, I mean, how do you get health care when you're in the US? Well, you get it through your work. Well, these jobs that we're talking about, they don't offer that. right?
Right. So I hope that you're seeing a theme here that I'm talking about, because this is something that eluded all of the analysts. So you have the 32 million who, let's not even talk about the medical bills themselves. You keep seeing these stories where the gentleman who recovered from ICU ended up with $80,000 in medical bills, and he had insurance. And maybe we need to do a refresher on how insurance actually works, because yeah, that's absolutely right. You can end up with that kind of an expense through no fault of your own, even if you have insurance. But most of you don't, right? You don't even have paid time off. And if you are like most people, if you take too much time off, then your employer in your at-will employment state, and there are what, 48 at-will? I forget the exact number. It's like 35 or higher states have at-will employment. You're gone. You're gone. So you're part of that number, right? So in August, it says only 13.4% of unemployed persons teleworked because of the coronavirus. So this to me was huge. 13% of everybody who goes to work had the ability to do telecommuting. Did we not just learn our lesson? Right? So if you're working in a warehouse or something like that, that's not available to you. But there are more than 13% in the professional, the office environment that can and are not. That's a big number. And most of the people I know have returned to the office. They're wearing masks and things like that. But I'm like, why? Why would we do it? Oh, yeah, because the pandemic is over. In 5.6 million persons reported that they had been unable to work because their employer closed or lost businesses due to the pandemic. That number to me was very, very telling. 5.6 million people went to work and the door was closed. Or they went to work and at the end of their shift, their employer went, yeah, this is your last one, collect your check on the way out, bye. Or some of them didn't even get a check, and now they got to chase down their employer to get that last check. And there's one story that I put in here that I think is pretty indicative of how this happens. And I don't know if you saw this, but there's a restaurant in Wisconsin, one of those family mom and pop restaurants called the Pine Cone. And this restaurant went through the pain because you couldn't have people in your restaurant. Wisconsin was not as good at shutting down as other states, but they kind of went through the motions, that sort of thing. So the Pine Cone still had people working, doesn't really pay benefits, barely pays their employees. Most of their staff works on tips or they split tips. So what happened? The employees showed up one day, and at the end of their shift, like first shift workers, the breakfast crew, at the end of their shift, their boss went to them and said, hey, you are not allowed back in this building. And we are closing. This is your last day. And we do not want you to tell the next workers who are arriving for the second shift. Go home. So everybody that day, that was their last day, they lost their job. And this restaurant owner, I don't recall his name, but I've got the link in there. He posted a sign that this was due to the Biden administration and the government, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's what happened. This particular restaurateur got well over $400,000 in PPE recovery loans that he was supposed to give to his employees and keep his business open. He didn't. He shut his doors, pocketed that money, and he was like, yeah, I'm done. And then later, when he got called out for it, he's like, yeah, it really wasn't the government. It was me. I just had time. Still, employees are not being paid. So of those workers, the 5.6 million in this report, those are the Wisconsin restaurant people. These are just moms and dads trying to go to work. The cooks, the waitresses, all of these people. That is what's going on. So this I thought was very telling when we talk about, okay, the PPE loans, and Andy, you and I covered it, that there's a number of loans that have not even been distributed yet, that there's only a fraction of them have been distributed. This guy got 400,000 and robbed his employees, but yet it's the employees' fault. right? Um, Josh, do you guys just dunk on Republicans here? I don't think Fred Hampton would be. Hey, Josh, did you just get here? Did you just get here? No, we are neither left nor right when we're all about the truth. And if you haven't been paying attention, you just got here. We're talking about the economy right now, today.
Yeah,
Who's in
did
charge of
anybody
that?
even, did either of us say Republicans this show? I don't remember saying it.
No, no. Oh, Josh, catch up, buddy. Get you some coffee. Do whatever you need to do. But yeah, do we just dunk on Republican? Oh no, baby. No, baby. Stay tuned. so
No, we just
so
call out
that
bad
was
behavior. We don't, we're we'll call out on whoever is behaving badly. We really, it doesn't matter
absolutely.
what party they belong to, right?
Yeah, thank you, Narissa. She said, I'm not sure they ever said Republican. It's your fault. You think that's true. I said Wisconsin. So did that mean Republican to you, Wisconsin? There are no Democrats in Wisconsin. Weird. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. Josh is going to get his shit together, and so we'll move on. So there was one company that I really wanted to profile in this because it's a company that's near and dear to my heart for no other reason than when I was going through leadership development training early on in my career. This was a company that was highlighted as the best of the best, like the leadership that you want to have. And this was Southwest Airlines. And I've mentioned it before, and I got the name of the CEO wrong and mentioned the band. The CEO that we studied and profiled was Herb Keller. And Herb Keller is famous because he would always go back to the employees and treat them, like people, like adults, whenever the airline was having a financial setback. And when it was bad enough, he would say, okay, look, guys, here's what our numbers look like. We are trying to compete with these big guys. We're just starting out, and we suffered a loss. We've suffered a major loss, not only this quarter, but this quarter and this quarter. And either I'm going to have to do some layoffs, or I want you to help me figure out how we're going to make up the shortfall, right? And the employees did. All of the employees got together and said, well, we're going to do this, this, and this. And this started the culture of employees having the autonomy to work better for their customers. And this is where they got the happiness and everything else. And if you still look out today, their Wall Street symbol is love, L-U-V. It has nothing to do with the name of the company. And it's very rare that you get that kind of moniker. But it was love because Herb Keller used to sign everything Love Herb because he meant it. He meant it, right? So this company has always been near and dear to my heart because of good leadership. So they just made the news again because of two things. Number one, their earnings, and two, because of this interview that came out with the incoming CEO, Robert Jordan. So Andy, would you mind putting up that quote for me? Because those of
Absolutely.
you who are watching us, those of you who are watching it, I want you to understand what he said specifically. And those of you who are watching us or listening to us on a podcast, I'm going to read it to you. So Southwest Airlines has plans right now to hire about 13,000 workers. They're going to start with 5,000 and then pick up another 8,000-ish as things go on. So he was interviewed recently talking about this job market, and all of you millennials and Generation Z who totally screwed everything up. I'm being facetious. He was talking about that, how the change in the job market has really affected somebody at his level and how they think about things. And here's the quote that I pulled from this article. He said a lot, but this one I thought was pretty telling. He said, the constraints have always been, can we get aircraft? Can we get facilities? Can we get gates? I've never experienced a time when the constraint is, can we get employees? And the context of this is Robert Jordan had just gone through a Whataburger drive-through, and when he got his order, there was something stapled to the back, and he realized that that was a job application. That's how Whataburger is trying to get and solicit people to apply for jobs. So Robert Jordan talked about the hiring forecast for Southwest Airlines. They said typically when we had one job open, we would get 43 applicants. Now we're only getting 14, right? So somebody at his level who is very insulated from what the rest of us go through, he's starting to see it. But to you and I, 43 people applying for one job is a horrific situation. 14 people applying for one job is a horrific situation, because now I have to compete with 14 other people for a job. And what kind of job is it, right? So I looked up the how is Southwest doing, because they're pledging to hire 13,000 workers. Well, just in Q2, the second quarter of this year, still under a pandemic, fewer people are traveling, that sort of thing. They generated a net income, this is after their expenses, net income of $348 million for the quarter. It's just for one quarter. So when you go and look back at 2020 numbers or even Q1 numbers, Southwest is doing all right. This is why they're planning to hire. Okay, cool. Sounds great. What kind of jobs are we looking at in Southwest? Now, mind you, I'm not picking on Southwest. I just want to use them as an example. So, Andy, this is the second graphic. So I pulled up, what do employees make? Because if you call back to the jobs report, the average worker was getting a 17-cent raise for all of our hullabaloo and pushback and avocado toasting and I quit. The non-managerial employee was getting 14 cents on a raise. Here's what it looks like according to Glassdoor and a couple other things that kind of matched up with it. And these are self-reporting by employees. So we're looking at customer service, 16 an hour. Customer service agent salaries, 107 people reported 16 an hour. And intern hourly salaries, 15 an hour. Operation agent is $15 an hour. What was that thing again? We were fighting for 15 until we all realized that 15 was kind of a joke and we should be fighting for 25.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Southwest Airlines, right? Now the benefit to working at Southwest is they are the only company that has never laid off and no furloughs. They came really close last year, but then the federal government issued those PPE loans. So Southwest Airlines was one of those companies that went ahead and used it to shore up their business so they didn't have to lay anyone off. American Airlines, it was the union at American Airlines that went, as soon as this stuff was coming down in February, they got to the table and they started to protect their workers. So at that airline, it was the union doing it. Southwest, it was the company doing it. So, okay, that's pretty good, right? Here's the problem. These are their major competitors in the area where Southwest operates. It's not an airline to airline, but these are their competitors where they have the most employees. C.H. Robinson pays $49,000 a year. Ranger pays $48,000. Wesco Distribution pays $47,000. Okay, so these are non-degreed workers. These are average folks, moms and pops. So even Southwest, with their record-breaking profits and their performance quarter over quarter, still is not getting the message. They're going to have to do a lot better. The other thing I didn't know is like the gate workers and things like this, those people who are on the front line when you have a problem or when you have violent people or whatnot, they're making like 15, 16 an hour. That's bullshit. Oh, and Sunita, yeah, and this is what I was thinking. Sunita says, can someone please give the CEOs another bailout? He has never seen this. It's the least we can do. Right. That's exactly right. Yeah, and John Kemper says, nobody's suggesting we do anything other than talk and educate. Can't see things how things will change. So John, I think you're talking about a direct action there. And I know that a lot of people are talking about, here's my problem. My personal opinion on direct action, we tried that with Black Lives Matter, and how many of us were shot? how many of us suffered through chemical warfare? How many of us moms and dads in the line of grannies in Seattle, right? That happened in this country. They're real quick to pull out the munitions on us. So I will never ask anybody to stand up and get the phone ever.
No, but we do have the ability to, through direct action to target companies, large companies, by either general strike or targeted stop buying their products, right? Like people have heard me say this ad infinitum. It's how do you affect capitalists in a capitalist society? You take away their ability to make capital, right?
That's exactly
worked before, right?
Yeah, and Jesus, good morning. He says, I hear the military is always hiring. Yeah.
Oh boy.
We have an all volunteer military that is designed through economic conscription. If we were all really comfortable and doing well and pursuing higher education and higher thoughts like music, art, and all of these things, mathematics, we'd have trouble recruiting for the military. So yeah, and then someone else was it. Oh, the military provides technical training for a huge portion of the airline industry. That's true. That's true. From mechanic all the way to pilot. Absolutely. So it gives them a nice transition from there. Oh, and John Kemper said, I got shot in Black Lives Matter Chicago. It'll take more to save this world for my grandchildren. Yeah, that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. So okay, I'm going to toss this out because I obviously don't have all the answers here. What do you guys think? I have presented to you my thesis on what is actually going on in the jobs market that they refuse to see. And I present to you that we still have a pandemic going on. We have not adequately addressed our small businesses in this, which represent 98% of all businesses, the economic engine in this country for growth and providing that GDP number. We haven't supported them. We haven't supported our employees. We don't have paid sick leave. We don't have benefits. We don't have Medicare for all. And as Andy said, we don't have a federal jobs guarantee. And I think that all of that goes in part and parcel of numbers. And then, oh, by the way, at the very bottom of that federal jobs report, talks about manufacturing. The only sector that is doing marginally well is the automotive manufacturing sector. That is all we manufacture in this country, and the profits still go overseas because of globalization. Other countries like Germany and things like that, they do have a modicum of manufacturing in country, rebound much faster in an economic downturn, and particularly in a pandemic. We don't have that. We're not eating that. We're not doing any of that. So yeah, so I'm going to put that out to you guys. What should we do? Is this direct action? Is this more of the I'm going to quit and walk away? What do you think is actually going to get their attention? Because based on what I'm seeing on the commentary on this jobs report, they still don't give a shit. So I don't know. Andy, what do you think? It's an unfair question to just drop in your lap, but you and I talk about this a lot. So.
Well, John Kemper just said that he is a vet, and he left because he didn't want to be their murderer. I'm sorry for what I did. I owe my life to help save this world. And when we look at the military, the direct correlation with what we say is a federal job guarantee, right? Or as some people describe it, as a job of last resort, right? Employment for people in an economic downturn or a company that shuts down. These are a way to keep people whole so they don't lose their homes, that kind of thing. Well, until this point, it was the military that was the employer of last resort, right? And it did. I mean, but you have recruiters that are in the high schools in places like Michigan who places where they don't have a lot of job prospects, come with us. We'll give you a skill. We'll give you a job. We'll pay you. And then after a certain amount of time, you go into the workforce and you have a viable skill. The part they don't talk about is, well, we're going to probably send you to another country to kill their people. Right. And when you get home, we're really not going to support you in any way. And all of the horrible things that you have to deal with, you're on your own with that too. Right. If we think in terms of the federal government, who is the issuer of the currency, who can afford to do this, has a program in place in each community that makes people whole by guaranteeing them a job and working with them at a decent wage, at a living wage, with at least the bare minimum of benefits like Medicare for all, paid leave, and a pension, right? Then we don't have to rely on the world's biggest polluter, the US military, to be the employer of last resort. And I know that's when we talk about these things, of course, these are always, the best case scenario. And I think we understand that currently the centrist neoliberal oligarch based society that we live in is still has all the power and all the money. But we need to talk about these ideas at least and make sure that as many people know about it as possible, because then we understand what we're capable of, right? And then we understand how we can live in a just society and how we have it, right?
Out the example that we just talked about last week. Canada just had their federal elections, and now they have to form a minority coalition government because of the way that those seats split, the seats won. So I always talk about this, right? When you have the duopoly where it's, vote blue no matter who, or vote blue to save America, or vote Republican to save America, that's two parties. That's two parties, right? Pick your flavor of the same coin. But when you start introducing more parties, like the Socialist Party, and I don't mean the Democratic Socialists, that's blue. I mean the Socialist Party, a true independent working people's party, the Green Party, and you start having all of this where even Democrats, like if you're a vote blue no matter who and you're a dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, you have got to stand up when your party uses nefarious tactics to kick other candidates off the ballot. Do we not believe in democracy here, right? We saw it in Wisconsin where the Democratic Party kicked off a number of not just top ballot, but down ballot Greens. Why the hell would you allow that? If you cannot compete on the merits of your ideas, sit the hell down. Let people have things. Let us talk about policy. Let us have that debate. I don't want to have a red versus blue. I want to look at like Canada where they're talking about actual policy. And here's the Democratic Party and the New Democratic Party and the coalitions that they have to build because they have to talk. And that we're trying to do that at a local level with our neighbors. Why aren't they? Why aren't they? So I think that's another part of it when we're talking about the political aspect of it, your civic duty, because I know so many people who checked out. I get it. That's what they wanted you to do. They wanted you to wanted you to be so disgusted you check out. Well, if you're not going to watch me do corruption, if you're not going to watch me do some bullshit, then great. I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it because you checked out, right? And all the stories that we did last week, stories that we have coming up this week, are about local elections. We talked about the grift of people losing their homes and all of that. Those are local policies. And if you're checking out, guess what? It's going to happen to you. So just real quick, we're almost out of time here. We actually have another candidate coming back. Gregory Carr, who's running for Congress, is going to be back on our show. We want to just put some ideas. We've already had a conversation with him about why he's running, but I want him to kind of prove to me that you are a true progressive, and let's have a conversation about these headlines. And if you were in Congress, what would you do right now so that I can hold your feet to the fire when you get elected, right? So this guy's running as a Democrat. I am not a Democrat. But if he gets to Congress now, he affects me. So I I can push back. That's my job. That's my civic duty to say, hey, AOC, or in this case, hey, Gregory, why did you vote this way? Why did you do that when all of your constituents are telling you not to? Who is it that you serve, right? So, and let's push back a little bit. Let's see how Gregory handles this, because I know Gregory Carr, Karr. I worked with him as an advocate, and like you said, I've taken fire. I've been in the trenches with Gregory, so I believe that he will take a backbone with him to Congress, whereas others have not. So, yeah. So, okay, Sweet Drifter, you're new here, and boy, are you fired up. Capitalism would wipe out all workers if they could. Actually, no, not all workers, because that's not profitable. Where capitalism comes in, and I posted this on Twitter once, is look up the Hawthorne effect. The second generation of the Hawthorne effect required capitalism to make employees fight amongst each other. So you had the overlords and the underlings. There are other terms to describe it I won't use here, but yeah, capitalism does not make a profit on destroying workers. It's got to keep churning out workers, hence the anti-abortionists, right? You can't have birth control. Can't have any of that stuff. We need the new generation of workers. Oh my God, you're not replacing each other with the birth rate. That's where they freak out. And that's Republicans, Democrats, all across the board who side with capitalism. So no, there's no profit in destroying all of your employees. Just keep them fighting each other. Oh, hey, John, thank you so much. John gave us a super chat, $5. Yay, we get some Timmies. Listen to all Fred Hampton shows. You people encourage me, and I know we have some people with encouraging in them. Thank you so much, John. Thank you. I appreciate that, and solidarity to you and everyone in Chicago. So I really appreciate all the comments and everybody back and forth. You guys are just phenomenal on a Monday. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. You guys are brilliant. So, Andy, that's all I got for this morning. And like I said, we'll be back on Wednesday with Gregory Carr. So, yeah. Give us your uplifting hallelujah for the Monday. What's going on?
No.
Thank you, Andy.
I'm kidding. Everybody take it easy. No, I'm actually in a bit of a good mood the beginning of this week because of the macro and cheese podcast that we did on the weekend with Representative John Yarmouth from Kentucky's Congressional 3rd District, who was extolling the virtues of MMT. And if you don't know John, he is also the the chair of the House Budget Committee. And it was a very uplifting conversation because he was very correct on all his talking points about asking the questions in the correct order and asking the right questions instead of how are we going to pay for it, how can we not pay for it, like what do we do first instead of how do we do it, right? And we can only hope that John has some influence with his other government officials, and we start to actually fund things that will cost the oligarch class some money, because this needs to happen. We've got some absolutely horrendous situations, even just with climate change right now. Right? We're talking about these huge fires that are burning in California and these drought conditions. And we went through a summer where people were dying because of heat frustration. And so these changes have to happen, and they have to happen very soon. It's the only way that we're going to allow ourselves to live on this planet. And on that happy note, I know I always do that. I'm sorry. I want to give on a happy note, but yeah. Anyways, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. It's a pleasure. We hope you enjoyed the show and maybe learned a little bit. We are Carrie and Andy, Hair of the Dog, on the Fred Hampton Leftist channel, and we're also on the excuse me. We're also syndicated so soon, hopefully, in different parts of the country on radio as well. That's a very important thing that we will be talking about very soon. But if you have a few extra dollars, we appreciate the donations on our Ko-fi page and through Super Chats, because that's how we fund and that's how we're able to continue to do this. So again, thank you very much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you here bright and early on Wednesday morning. Take care.
We bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the dog, we keep it in G.